Good morning, sober starters. How are you? It is Saturday morning here in Newbridge. I don't know what time it is where you are, but it's a beautiful morning. The sun is shining. It's quite warm. It's about 19 degrees. Oh no, hang on. It's lashing rain and it's really cold. But who cares? It is, I think it's our third weekend of sobriety or sober cures or whatever you're doing. Hope you're doing well. And this is one of those chats we're going to do every now and then whenever we get around to it, whenever we decide, whenever I get my arson gear, basically. The guest this morning is Aileen Slein. Aileen, you are, let me correct me if I'm wrong, you're a meditation, would you say meditation teacher? Hang on, I'll get through the list and you can correct me. Yoga teacher, I know. You're a mom. Would you say mom or mother? You can tell me afterwards. Um, Listen, you tell me a little bit about yourself, Aileen.
Hey Keith and all the sober starters. I
It's
am
catching on, Eileen, isn't it? Sober
catching
starters.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We were gonna go with SS, but
that could be a little tricky.
problematic.
Um, so I am a meditation teacher. I'm a yoga teacher. I teach people to be yoga teachers. I'm a mom. I'm a single mom. I live in Sligo. I just moved here very recently because before that I was living in West Cork. I have an 11-year-old son, and he's just started in a school called the Sudbury School here in Sligo, which is why we moved here. So, yeah, that's kind of briefly who I am.
That's good. And now I don't I know you didn't want to do a major plug on it, but you're a podcaster with the Journey Home podcast that people can check out. It's there available
Yeah.
on Spotify at the moment, and it will be wherever you get your podcasts very soon. Um, Tell us a little bit about the school, just very briefly.
So my son, he's 11. He's somewhere on the autistic spectrum. He's neurodiverse, and he has severe dyslexia and dyscalculia. So really mainstream school was quite tricky for him because, well, reading, writing, and maths. Dyscalculia is basically dyslexia of maths.
Matt, yeah.
And he just, so all the subjects that you've got to kind of rock up and do, English, Irish, maths, German, or not German, but Irish.
One of those languages.
So he um he really struggled in school, and then that just made his neurodiversity to be a lot more challenging because he was kind of trying to manage all this stress. So it was just really hard for him. So I homeschooled him actually for a year and a half. I took him out of school and homeschooled him, and that was really difficult. And he was just bored looking at me because he's an only child. So I knew about this Sudbury school, and the Sudbury model is it's a democratic self-led school. So the children, there's no rules. Children decide the rules. They're very much part of how the school operates. And there's a whole mentor, there's adults there who are mentors, and they're there supporting the children. But basically Dira goes in and he decides what he wants to do. He stays there from 9:30 to 3:30, but he can go in at any time up till 10 o'clock. So he can go from 8:30 up till 10, and he has to be there until 2:30, but he can stay there till 4. So he's got flexible times of arrival, flexible times of leaving. And then he totally decides his day. They have a whole series of clubs that he could be part of. So, camera club, art club, drama, music, read, library, computer, coding, but he doesn't have to be part of any of them. And he can come up with anything he wants to have in the school. So it's amazing. It's totally radically changed his experience going to school. Now it's like, he's devastated if he has to stay at home. He's like, can I go in and can I go for longer?
Yeah. No, Mama, it's 4 o'clock. No, I'm going to stay here. We've all decided. We had a meeting. We're all staying here. It's very interesting. It's amazing. There are people who would hear that and think, "So that's mad." But
Yeah.
I'd say it's amazing to give people kids a bit of control over their day, and I'd imagine the results will be amazing. I don't want to dwell on that too long, but I think people would be interested because it sounds just the name of it, and I'd heard it before. Um, Tell us about your own sober, curious. Where are you at now? Are you
So I
not
don't know.
boozing?
Is the terminology sober curious? I'm like pretty
No,
much I don't
you're sober, really, I suppose.
I'm sober really. I would have like say if I go out sometimes and I might have a drink, but I don't have anything more than that. And I'm pretty much sober. I don't drink at all anymore. But that's probably because I did an awful lot of drinking before that.
Yeah, I've done all my drinking.
I, I condensed it all into a short period.
It was kind of like I used to look at my units for the week and try and say, well, I'll save them all up for one night because I don't like just having one unit. Got to have them all,
No fun.
and then have the same again. Have next week's units the day after, and then forget about them.
So yeah, I kind of did my whole lifespan in a short period. No, what happened was is that actually my I suppose I grew up in a typical Irish family. My dad, he grew up in a pub, and then he was a publican for a period of time, and then he worked for Beamish, and then he worked for Irish Distillers. So my house, I'm from a big family. My house had a lot of drinking in it. That was basically, it was an Irish household. I don't think it was any different from lots of households that were in Ireland. So I was the youngest of a family, and there was a big age gap between me and my siblings. So when I was growing up, we had lots of parties in the house. There was a lot of drinking. So drinking just felt very, this is what you do. It's very normal. So really, I started drinking when I was about 12, and obviously sneaking out drinks here and there. And by 15, I was drinking, going out at the weekends, and then that just progressed. So I was drinking probably a lot, but it didn't seem a lot because everybody else around me was drinking a lot. So I suppose it's that normalization, isn't it, of alcohol in our culture, um, that it's okay to be really messy and drunk, and who doesn't wake up the next day with fear. So I drank like that for quite a while. And then when I was about 27, I one morning woke up, and this was actually a catalyst to a whole other story to probably how I ended up becoming a yoga teacher. So when I was 27, I'd been out on a massive party, and I woke up the next day and I was sitting in my house and I just thought, God, I feel awful.
Mm.
So I think I'm, going to ditch this whole thing. So basically, I decided to sell my house, leave my job, and I headed off to
Jesus,
Greece.
that was some hangover. Like I've gone drinking and ended up in London, but like I've never been that bad.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so you sold the house, and moved to Greece.
So Greece originally, but that was a party also in Greece. But the interesting thing is that when I went to Greece, I actually had a motorbike accident, like classic thing to do when you're in Greece. And so I got laid up for quite a while, and then anyway, I went to India. And so the interesting thing was when I went to India, it was a dry state that I went to. And this was the first time I'd ever been somewhere where alcohol wasn't part of what you did.
Mm.
So alcohol wasn't anywhere and nobody was drinking. And all of a sudden you went out in the evening time, you had a meal and you had conversations and you didn't have drink. And it was like, this is very unusual, but also actually quite enjoyable. I don't need alcohol. And that was the first time I'd actually experienced that, because I didn't realize it then, but alcohol was a massive crutch of how to be with people, how to mingle, how to, bond with people, how to let the barrier down with people. So all of a sudden, I was in this dry state in India. Nobody's drinking, nobody wants to drink, nobody's looking to go drinking. And yeah, it's just a whole other world started to open up towards me. So I spent 3 years in that process. But then I came back to Ireland, and that was really interesting when I came back to Ireland and I wasn't drinking because, you know, I the people I'd hung out with were still drinking. And now all of a sudden I wasn't drinking. So it's a really interesting re-entry when you
Mm.
come back. I mean, it just takes some time for you to both settle back into this new way of being. Um, So when I came back, I didn't stay off alcohol. My attitude had probably changed towards it. So I didn't drink to the same level. I didn't drink for the same reasons. I still enjoyed the buzz that you got from drinking. And so I think that was the thing that I actually enjoyed was just the laugh that you'd have, the ridiculousness, the
Mm,
silliness, the stupidity, just the fun.
letting go.
Yeah, letting go and being really ridiculous and everybody being really ridiculous. And that's a bit of crack. So didn't so he was kind of drinking, but I wouldn't be drinking all the time, but I would be drinking every now and then. And then I
Can I
got
ask
cancer.
you? Can I ask you? Ooh, I just got in at the right time, at the big C. Wow, that was good. Sorry, but in at the very wrong time. Can I just before we get to that? Like, were you struggling with the drink? Like, were you thinking, "Oh, I don't want to drink, but I am." But I like, was it a period of, or were you just like, it wasn't a thing? Was there? Because I for years have been like, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to drink anymore. But it was just easier to drink, even though I didn't want to. Couldn't figure out a way of not drinking.
Yeah, I think that really actually nails it. I don't didn't feel I think I suppose part of me still wanted to be accepted by the tribe. So I was already strange enough that I wasn't drinking now off all the time
As much, yeah, yeah, yeah.
as much.
Oh,
I
you've
was
changed, Aileen. You've changed.
yeah, and there
What
was
happened
actually
to you in India?
yeah, yeah. I mean it didn't help that I came back and I was wearing bells around my ankles and long flowing skirts and
Just doing whatever you wanted to do. That doesn't work for people. Where's the
it
because
just added to everything, it added to everything. But I think oh, I don't know. I think it's something you grow into, isn't it? Like the older that I get, the more okay I'm about who I am.
yeah, you kind of get to a point where you stop caring. I give up. Lockdown really helped because there was no one around. I didn't have to say it to anybody. I just did what I was doing. The and just be, can we just? I want to just go back a little bit because before you went to India, like you were working in um like you were sort of like you'd bought a house, you had a car, you'd probably a Beamer, was it? Like you were that kind of like career driven, like but very at a very young age. Like because I didn't even start driving or I was traveling mostly until about like 30 or something. So I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was going to do. But you were very young to be to me, it sounds like to be having that job, career business or career woman focused. Would that be fair to say?
Definitely because I think I was 21 when I bought my first house. And it was I'd worked from when I was really young. I'd always worked. I came from a family where there was a really strong work ethic. And to do well was important, to be seen, to be striving was important. And I'm not saying there's not anything wrong with any of those things, but it was for me, I had tied my identity into it. It was
Mm,
how my value was equated. So, I needed to do well at whatever the job I was in. I needed to be the best at what I was doing in there. I needed to have the trappings of that. So that meant I needed to have a house and a car. And
they're the badges of success for for certain if you're in a certain headspace.
yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, really as well, all of those were just um, running away from trauma, ways of distracting, strategies of staying away from these things will make me feel better. Alcohol will make me feel better. And it does for a period of time. But, then, well, for me, my experience is you got to wake up the next day and deal with, if there's consequences, you got to deal with those consequences. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was
So
kind of what I was
I
doing.
presume that I mean it was a time in Ireland where if you were young and you had a bit of money, and drinking was all a part of that kind of thing. If you're working hard, work hard, play hard,
Yeah.
really suffer with a hangover, really anxiety hard the next day, fear
Yeah.
hard, all those things. But you gotta be strong for it. You gotta be, you know, you feel like you're less than if you can't keep up with everybody else. And you don't know that everybody else is also like, suffering behind closed
Yeah.
doors on the Sunday morning on their own, but just saying, no, I'm grand. Um, so fast forward then to that point you got to when you were drinking, not drinking, and you got some bad news.
Yeah. So I got diagnosed with cancer in September 2019. And um, then obviously when I was doing chemo and stuff like that for a year, I wasn't drinking then. And then I stopped doing chemo and
You
yeah,
gave up.
so
You gave up the Kibo. You got
gave up the chemo.
wasn't working as an alternative to alcohol. It's wild. I'm sorry.
The other.
The chemo doesn't suit her. I'm
So
sorry.
I finished chemo, and to be honest with you, when I finished chemo, I still was drinking in the same manner. Now, I had also met a teacher at this stage, and I was doing a mindfulness teacher training with this American teacher called Jason Siff, and I'd had I'd gone out one evening, and I'd the thing about it was that I couldn't actually drink an awful lot. Like
Mm.
I can't drink an awful lot, and I'm really unwell. And I said, I feel terrible. Like I feel really awful. And he said, just don't drink.
Oh, it's so simple, isn't it?
Oh, simple.
I just love the naivety and it's such a beautiful sentence, isn't it? I mean, for an to say that to an Irish person, it's just like, what? Like, what's this voodoo? Black magic? What's this not drinking? You think but it's such a simple sentence, isn't it? And then you're like, "Oh, yeah." I don't think an Irish person could ever say that with sincerity. With sincerity, I don't think that was ever been said by an Irish person.
Possibly not. No, and it was really how he said it was so clear to him.
Yeah?
It was so clear to him, so obvious to him that he said it with such clarity that it just was like, oh yeah, I don't need to drink.
Just don't do the, just don't do that to yourself again. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
just stop
And
banging your head
so
off walls. Yeah.
yeah. And so then I decided that I was, and interestingly enough, what I found is that all of a sudden I then said to everybody, I'm not drinking anymore. So I made this decision. It's not like, oh, I'm drinking a little, or I'm drinking on that day, but I'm not drinking on that day, or I'm having one glass, or I have two. Because if you have one glass, they're like, I should go and have another one. Look, just have one more and we'll call it a day. So it's that kind of a thing. So when I said I'm just not drinking anymore, people went, oh, right, okay, you're not drinking. Okay, fine. But now, to be honest with you as well, I think right now, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's so much easier to say that. And people are like, oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Loads of people don't drink now. So it's much more in our conversation. It's much more in the consciousness that's there is to say that you're not drinking isn't this, wow, you're not drinking. Whereas originally back in my, early 30s, it was like, what are you talking about? You're not drinking. That's insane.
Yeah, something wrong with you.
Something's wrong with you. Whereas now it doesn't feel such a strange thing to say. You can
Um,
say that and people don't. Well, I mean, for me it wasn't, or maybe it was just I was much more comfortable with when I said I'm not drinking anymore, people were like, yeah, that's fine. And so I stuck with that.
but also you'd also find you're hanging out with different people, you're having different conversations at different times of the day with different types of people. And some of your older friends might drift away, and that's okay. And you
Yeah,
can
but I think even though
so a lot of my people my age that I do know, and our friends have also given up drink as well. You know?
Yeah, but I even still like say I have a really good friend who I would have party hard with, basically in my 20s. We did a lot of partying together. And he was over recently and we went out. I just didn't drink. He was totally fine with it. He was drinking, he was having a great time, party for one. I was,
You were
doing
okay.
my thing.
You were great to hang
Heard
out with him for a maximum of
tea.
2 hours.
But the funny thing about it is that I've noticed is that actually I don't need drink. Like then I need to drink to allow myself to be ridiculous. Now I'm just kind of like, actually I am a bit ridiculous anyway. And that's totally fine. So yeah, I did find though saying I'm just not drinking was much easier.
That thing of him just saying so matter of factly and so like, duh, like that. You when you said that, I was like, it's just the way. It's like, yeah, fuck, the hell. But
Drink.
it's so loaded. You just realize it's so loaded. Like if you lived in a country, if you lived in a country, I don't know, let's pick the Faroe Islands or something.
Yeah.
You live on the main island, and you go into these places and they serve cocaine, and everybody takes cocaine. And when you get to 18, you go for a line of cocaine with your dad. And the Faroe Islanders are not like this, by the way. I just randomly picked them and give them a bad rep. Um, and you go for your first line of coke with your dad, or maybe you're doing a bit of coke with your friends when you're 15, but everybody's cool, you get sick, you're not able to function properly some days. It's grand. Parents turn a blind eye or just laugh at you and say, "Oh Jesus, you learn how to take your cocaine when you're older." And the cocaine is sold by, cocainists, and it's, branded, and there's ads before matches, and this, support the local football team. They do good in the community. There's a little bit of fallout. People end up in hospital, but like, you know, they're good employers on the island, and if that factory closed down, where would they be? They have to go back to fishing. So, and then you're from the Faroe Islands and you come to somewhere like Ireland, and
Yeah.
nobody's doing cocaine. Nobody. There's no cocaine shops. There's no cocaine bars. It's weird, It's just when you step out of it and you look at it, and like that's not being judgmental. It just is the way it is. For me, like it's probably the worst drug they could have picked to serve and make legal. Um, but look, it's been done now. Like I don't think I could go to, get voted in as a TD in the next election by saying, I'd like to turn all pubs into um cocaine houses, opium houses, like in London back in the day. Well, it was cool. So it's just interesting. It's a drug, and it's ultimately it's bad for you. You can have good fun on it, for a while, and it can seem like the best thing ever. And it's important as well for a period when you're young to just try things and go mad. But yeah, it is just very interesting when you step away from it. And fair play to you. How are you at the moment in your fitness, your healthness, have you
Yeah, no,
healthy
good.
body, healthy mind?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a cancer called triple negative breast cancer, and it's an aggressive form of cancer, and it was gone into my lymphatic system. So you have kind of the first 3 years after you finish your chemo is when it's most common for it to come back. And if it doesn't come back in those first 3 years, you're actually really, really good. So that's what they're really looking for in the first 3 years. And that was in August. So I am, yeah, really good.
There is there's a conversation if you go to the Journey Home podcast, and I have actually shared it on in the Discord so people can have a listen to it. But you do talk a bit more about that, and also the fact that, and I didn't really know this, and I was actually reading up about it last night, that 50% of relationships break up, 50% of partners leave when their partner gets a diagnosis of cancer specifically. Um, it can be any other. I think it's mostly cancers, actually. No shame, no blame, no finger pointing. It's something that happens. People might get scared. And I said it to someone last night, my daughter actually, who's very much cleverer than me. And she said maybe they don't want to be, maybe they think the person they love is going to die and they don't want it, they just can't handle it. They don't know what to do and they just panic. So I hadn't thought about it that way. I just thought those bastards.
Mm.
Um, but look, there's probably some bastards and some people who are just scared. But people are only bad because they're scared. And that's how you frame it.
I think it really is because, to be honest with you, it's, you know, I don't think somebody intentionally sets out to do something to cause harm to somebody else. You know, there's a whole sequence of events and history and whatever that feeds into it. It's not like somebody just randomly wakes up one morning and goes, I'm going to do this really horrendous thing just because of this precise moment. It's just that this precise moment has brought everything to a head.
Yeah.
And there's a big reaction to something. I mean, you know, that doesn't mean that it's not painful when you're in it. Of course it is. But I think, yeah, I mean, finger pointing is of absolutely no assistance to anybody, bar causing more suffering to everybody. So I think the thing about it, the thing I really wanted to bring forward was I'd never heard about it before. You know, all the only stories I'd ever heard about or seen were, you know, where somebody's walking over hot coals to carry their partner to chemo,
Yeah.
like, you know, bathing them with, you
Just
know,
wiping the sweat off your brow and fanning when you're hot and yeah, carrying you.
singing to you, reading to you, playing guitar, you know, the flute,
Yeah.
whatever.
Trying to sing to you, like sing your favorite song so you come out of your coma and then you're like, I wasn't in a coma, I was just asleep for a long time. What is it? 12, Jesus. Yeah, I mean you just hear about the good things, don't you? I don't need you to get into that as well either, but so that's there on did I mention the Journey Home podcast is there available? But all that stuff, those conversations are there. Can you tell me very briefly that podcast is there, but there's a reason for it. It's part of a bigger course, mindfulness, just basically teaching people about mindfulness. Tell me what it is. What's it all about?
But so it is, it's teaching people, but it's actually what I call it is self-inquiry. So it's about really just getting more and more familiar with ourselves and how we show up and how we function within the world. And use mindfulness for us to go and do that exploration. So the more that we know ourselves, the easier our relationship is with ourselves, and the easier our relationships are with people around us. And so we have a more peaceful life and are open to the natural joy that's around us, you know, in every moment.
Mm.
So that's what I'm doing now, and that's what the podcast is part of.
And people can find you on social media. Do you have a website?
I do. It's my name, AileenSlein.com. And my
Slein. I
name
don't know
is
why
Slein.
I say I've been saying
Slein.
Slein. Mm.
Yeah, because it's the spelling. It's Slein. It's not Slane.
I'm an idiot. You see, you can give up drink, but you're still an idiot. You know what I mean?
I know, but at least you know it.
Well, that's because the mindfulness. Because I was editing your podcast, I learned a lot about myself. I was like, oh
Yeah.
God, I'm an idiot, but I'm happy. Um, I'll let you go. I know you've things to do, and thanks very
Like
much for
brilliant.
giving up some time on your Saturday morning. And I will talk to you soon. Uh, yeah, I feel like we didn't have enough time, but that's because we talked for about half an hour before we start recording. There you go. Enjoy your Saturday. See you,
See you
Aileen,
later.
Aileen Slein.
See you then.
Goodbye.